that, I would like to welcome Kevin Hawkins to the stage. Thank you.
Hello.
Hello.
Hi, everyone.
Gosh, so nice to see you. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. I'm calling in from Denmark. Hopefully, you can hear me.
Oh my gosh, what are you doing out in Denmark today?
I am actually switching jobs, so it's my first week at a new company. I'll announce later on.
Oh gosh. Well, how about we start with that? Can you tell us a little bit about what your new role is? I'm really excited to hear about that.
Yeah, certainly. I'm joining a company called Monta to lead the future of electrification. So hopefully, bringing UX to improve the way you charge, the way Teslas work, and the way all the EVs work together with the grid, countries, and hopefully apps as well.
Oh, that's going to be fascinating because that's both a bridging of the digital and the physical worlds. And
Yep.
when we're talking about product design, I'm going to be really fascinated to hear what you say because that's not just a physical thing like in the US, say, you're in Denmark here. So we are talking about scaling internationally and what that looks like from a product design perspective. So I'm excited to hear about this. I'm going to go ahead and turn the mic over to you.
Okay, great. Can you see the screen? There we go.
Uh, there we
Perfect.
go.
I'll put your branding in there. Okay, great. So we're gonna just do a bit of a walk through how we got here. There's a lot of things that have been influencing international user research lately. You can imagine in COVID, you can imagine the return to the office, that a big impact. But before we go forward, some of these topics we're going to bring up, we're going to mention, layoffs and some unfortunate times in the industry. I prefer to use humor to get through these moments. So hopefully we can laugh and get through it. At my peak in my career, my largest team has been 105 people at a company called Glovo down in Barcelona. It is part of the Delivery Hero Group, which is very similar to DoorDash or Uber Eats. It's a series of companies around the globe that do local delivery from food to groceries to clothing. So everything in between that can fit in a bag on a courier gets delivered. I'm originally from Washington, D.C. You can probably hear my American accent, but I've traveled all over the world before ending up in Barcelona. Been in Barcelona for the last 3 years, and this is my fifth country where I've tried to, bring experiences from the past plus learn new cultures to do my job even better. So yeah, I'm near the sea, and then I'm always kind of traveling. So what I've been doing over my career, working at small companies, large companies, startups, scale ups, publicly traded banks, nonprofits, has mostly been in consulting. I started my career in fintech, 5, 6 years. Then I went to consulting. Then I went to in-house again at booking.com. Then started teaching and then ended up at Glovo. And then since then, I've decided to go more into leadership, which is the new role that I mentioned earlier. So I'm going to bring a couple different takes on international user research, both from an agency point of view and then also in-house. And I'm going to start with some like old sayings. So previously, we used to say that like $1 or €1, let's say, of investment in user experience used to mean $100 return. It has gotten a lot more impactful, a lot more important. And I think while user research is always part of the design team, we don't talk about how the ROI and the impact of user research is applied. Uh, Based on current metrics, it's looking like it's a lot more valuable. So when we look at user research, we're oftentimes looking at developer time savings and just company time savings. We're just looking at the developer part. Imagine we're saving, the average developer hourly rate of 36 US dollars, and then the number of hours the research avoids helps us avoid rework easily goes over 100. We're talking between 300 to 720 euros for an hour of research work. So whenever we're saving an hour of dev time, we're actually impacting thousands of dollars. And so the research investment actually is way more important than I think people talk about. And so having these tangible numbers helps us with influence, with leadership management changes, and then getting the stakeholder buy-in. So let's deep dive really quickly on the team I'm going to mention and use a lot for my talk today. I was previously the global UX director for Glovo. It's the second largest delivery platform globally, representing 34 countries, about 24 million orders a month. And the vision was to give everyone easy access to anything in their city. So this is local delivery. In terms of how the app looks, it's kind of very similar to what you would expect from an Uber Eats or a DoorDash or a Bolt or Walt. So they had a mixture of, a really unique home screen, but then the rest of the flow is quite similar. So filters for cuisine or food types or product categories, a map for the courier, updates on delivery, and updates on status for the order. So pretty straightforward. And so they went from food at the beginning to also working with shops, to working with supermarkets and grocery stores, to working with beauty and care and pharma. And then they also have a service that's like a DHL in-app in-city delivery. And so this is like a courier plus anything. This meant that if it was larger than a box, larger than a courier could hold, we would also organize shipments for like restocking paper at an office or a new printer, things that were a little bit more complicated. So we really did deliver anything at some point, and that became a really cool part of the business. Um, oops, let's see. I'm not sure if the audio will work, but there's a quick little video of what the team was like, and then I'll go into how we did international user research.
What I do like the most about my job is trying to elevate the role of content in the overall user experience. Because thanks to content, we guide and help the user navigate in our product.
Everything about my job, being the voice of the customer, the couriers, and the partners every day with all the executives.
Problem solving. I love solving complex problems for users. It's the most fulfilling part of my job.
I love UX being the central part of Glovo, that they give us so much trust and ownership and let us help them find the sweet spot between what the user needs and wants and the business objective and goals.
So working with people from different backgrounds, different experiences, creates to me like an opportunity to learn and just become better professional.
Innovation.
Compass.
Simplicity.
Empathy. Magic.
All right. Okay. So let's see. Perfect. So thankfully that worked. So let me explain a bit of the structure of the team and then the structure of the research team. So we ran a pretty hybrid team structure. So we had individuals embedded in teams, and then we had managers of them that were embedded in tribes. But then we ultimately had a centralized leadership team. So one for user research, one for design. We then restructured that so that there would be essentially just me, who was the director of all of UX. This included content and copy, localization, design, research, design ops, and research ops. So we were a lot more decentralized, kind of over towards the Apple style, less mixed like Atlassian. Ultimately, the structure meant that every single PM had a designer, and then every 3 PMs had a researcher. So super happy to have really embedded technical leaders in each area who were subject matter experts. And this made up a quite large team. So out of that 95 to 105 people that we had at our peak, we had about 32 people in research. We decided that when we went through a big shift in prioritization, that we need to have a more strategic, more central research organization. We started to use this like a metaphor. I love metaphors about the ladder of evidence. And so, most research, if it's done quickly, if it's done very rushed because of the deadlines we all have, we just ask people what they do, and we kind of use that to inform our decisions or to confirm our assumptions, things like that. Then we ask them what they've done in the past. How did you previously solve this problem? Have you had this problem before? What did you do? And then we look for certain stories. And then if you see a pattern across stories, you seem to get inferences and suggestions and ideas. The best research is actually being able to observe or watch a customer have the problem So imagine going into the lobby of a hotel or going to an airport and seeing an issue, or working at a facility like a lab or in medical at a hospital and watching the problems arise from the day-to-day operations of that business, of that service. And so this is something that we had really struggled to get to. Occasionally you have a research trip, but these were very rare, and then very high difficult problems, where even a single research trip probably didn't solve this very well. So we started to just kind of get rid of that bottom layer by having passive research, passive feedback come in. We built a public website, which is still available today, called research.globalapp.com. And you would see direct feedback. You could kind of sign up for surveys. You could kind of raise your hand, and it cut down on the research operations time because people didn't have to be hunted down and contacted to conduct research or to be invited to a study. We had a live kind of active audience who wanted to be contacted, who we could segment into languages, country of origin, usage groups, things like this. And it made the speed of research much, much faster. So this is how we kind of got people to sign up for the studies. And then we also were able to kind of get direct budget from the product department to actually fund and compensate research participants, which is a big deal for motivation to get someone to take 30, 45 an hour out of their day. For the consumers, it's a bit easy. You give them free food. For the restaurant owners, for the couriers, for logistics companies, this is a lot more important to incentivize them because they're taking productivity time out of their workday. This would all really result in some really basic but really important things. I think we all know in research, the research outcome are these insights or recommendations or summaries, and then you have to kind of store them, these insights. And everyone has a repository, and it's kind of where things go to die to an extent. We have like all these recommendations and suggestions and cool things, but depending on the speed of the research, sometimes the project the research was meant for has already gotten too far along and it's being shipped, it's being worked on, it's being released, and the research will get used maybe next time. Other times, the research is not granular or deep enough to change the roadmap or make people change their opinions or beliefs. And so the impact of these insights sitting in the repository isn't always super high. Then you have user journey maps. So we can say we have research about a process or a flow. We can see tons and tons and tons of customers having the same problem, giving the same feedback. We have the same recommendations. So we actually put together a journey of each step that they go through, the feedback they have at that step, the frustrations, the positives, the negatives, and we can actually kind of see the entire experience end to end for a certain task or a certain section of the business. And then we had other reports, and we did workshops to kind of assimilate and distribute these insights into the company. All of this became really fragmented. So we started to build this really super powerful Airtable, or just say we built it in Airtable, and it was called a UXR blueprint. My favorite thing the research team was able to do, because with the size we had and the redundancy we were seeing, we really understood that this needed to be a bit of an easier resource to access. So we went ahead and moved over to a UXR blueprint, and I'll put a bigger version up on the screen in a second. But it kind of allowed us to show the screenshot of every single piece of the product, all feedback that came in per screen, categorize the feedback by first-time user experience versus return user versus super user, and actually just map everything very visually. So people who were not great with like Miro and like visuals could still get a visual representation of the kind of quantified document, the documentation that wasn't just the visual images and diagrams. So this is a quick GIF of what it looks like. You can see multiple journeys, multiple steps in a journey. You can see the screenshots tied to that. You can see the comments tied to that. You can see the source of where it came from. You can see actions, suggestions, pain points, and anything that related to an OKR or an objective or a goal for business. If it was tied directly to one piece of feedback or one insight, you would all be mapped here. This is a lot to go through. This is the kind of admin side where we input that data. The interface where you would see this was a lot more simpler. You could always access the raw insights, the raw documentation like this. And you know, when I joined, things were good. They had just been acquired. Global had just been acquired. A lot of companies were in this kind of very free cash flow period. Investors were giving money. It was easy to raise rounds, Series A, Series B, go public. You know, just growth was happening, rapid growth, hyper growth, if you will. and companies were overhiring. We were expanding and having the luxury to do a lot more work that we always wanted to do. Um, and this also meant, as you can see in the industry, like a huge number of increase in user interviews and methodologies for research. This is really great, but it was not sustainable. And I think at some point we all knew we wanted to have more strategic research. We wanted to be able to split our workload, but it just hadn't happened yet. At Glovo, we had merged with this powerful parent company, but we were about half their size. So when we merged, we doubled the total size of the organization, and there was no overlap in markets. So we had user research about South Africa, Eastern Africa, Western Africa, Northern Africa, and West Asia. They had East Asia, they had South America, they had Northern Europe, we had Southern Europe. So it was a really nice blend. It was a really nice combination that allowed us to see research, insights, feedback, and trends globally. Um, and this is a picture of the team, of a group of the team, a subgroup in Morocco, where we were conducting studies on Ramadan and eating habits during, the fasting period, and then the mass consumption and ordering peak that happens when you break your fast at the end of Ramadan. And it just had a huge impact on our business. And so we actually spent a lot of money to conduct special research on certain cultural holidays that impacted consumption. And so ultimately, this led to some like really, really big keynote speech given by the CEO of the parent company, Nicholas from Delivery Hero, about the future of the industry, about working on a multi-sided platform, a massive marketplace. And marketplaces are my favorite thing. It's the most complicated products to solve for. Imagine Booking.com, imagine Uber, imagine all the platforms where there's a buyer, a seller, a delivery person, or a third party like an Airbnb. So they're super complicated, and then people really need to have strong visions to build them well and keep all players happy. And then we went through this really difficult period. If you remember, in that peak window, 2022 through 2023, you saw mass layoffs. And in the food delivery business, it was pretty hard. To me, it was quite a deja vu. I had worked in Booking.com and travel companies during COVID and saw a very similar issue. So this was my LinkedIn morning headline every single day, watching the companies in our space, Just Eat, Gorillas, Takeaway, DoorDash, Deliveroo, Gets Here, just do layoffs. And, my leadership came to me and they said, hey, all we're seeing is red. So we're losing money. We're not seeing delivery and orders. We have to cut the team. And, I said, okay, let's say we reduce the team from 105 down to 64. We went through this really painful process for months. And my number one focus was the morale of the team that we had left, making sure everyone we were letting go was getting to a new job, was being taken care of. But then after all that happened and all the dust settled, we have a much smaller team and we have the same expectations, the same workload, the same number of squads and development teams, and the ratios are way off. So now what? Now what do we do? Our focus needed to really be on our customers, but we had more customers. Honestly, even though there were these layoffs happening in tech, honestly, it's been a really great period for a lot of industries in terms of free cash spend. So people were still, returning to the world after COVID and traveling more and ordering out more and eating out more and spending money on experiences. So we really need to focus on the trends we were seeing with, friends with benefits, with families, with partners. Our international office teams were seeing different trends at different times. We had local operations and logistics teams, so the courier networks, the warehouses, all of the shipping, and just the planning of all of running a huge logistics company, because Global ultimately, like Amazon, is like a really large, powerful like airline plus warehouse company with a nice, pretty app on top. And so this was really important for the research team to not lose track of as we were being overwhelmed with the workload. So our teams were super important to get involved, sort of to brainstorm a lot more with internal teams, sort of to democratize research and really ask them, what's the most important research that you need? How much of it can you help with? How much can you do? And let's share the workload. We started talking to our partners who made innovative technology like drones, and we started to say, we share research back and forth. Let's kind of break down the garden wall between our third parties and our internal research and insights. And I went to the HIPPOs. HIPPO stands for the highest paid person's employee, highest paid person's opinion, which are our founders of the company. They oftentimes, without research, would just dictate things, especially as we had a slow down in the research speed and the research quality. Sometimes you go with your gut, and sometimes you go with your heart, and that can be great. But when you have a lack of research consistently, purely going off of singular opinions, people who are not exposed to the business, who are not exposed to the customers and the changing behaviors and trends, is very dangerous. So I need to remind everyone that UX is really an outcome, right? UX is not a team or a skill or a department. It's really an outcome of all of our work put together. It's the agents who talk to the couriers. It's the agents who talk to customers. It's the account managers. It's sales. It's the PMs. It's customer service. It's data analytics team. It's everyone who manages communications and marketing. When all that comes together, the end result is the user experience. And so what they actually experience when they try to sign up, when they have a problem, when they have a good day, when they're loyal, when they are leaving, when they travel to a new country and use our product, all of that is the user experience. It's everything. So we needed to figure out, as we scaled down the team, how to scale up certain things. We needed to scale up empathy building for the leadership team. This is Oscar, the founder. We needed to scale up the ability to conduct and have successful self-service research, which meant that PMs, data analysts, designers, researchers, design ops, research ops, account managers, program managers, all needed to have the ability to conduct more high quality user research without the support of an expert or a staff user researcher. We needed to scale up research operations, which is like all of the gritty work it takes to legally contact customers, do GDPR, waivers for recording them, filming them, storing their information, physically visiting them and taking photos of them, all of the logistics plus scheduling, working with no-shows, everything. And then also doing compensation. So paying them after they successfully complete research with us. And so this was a huge, huge task because we also lost people on this team. And we needed to scale up responsibilities. We honestly needed to have more senior researchers. We needed to have the research skills of the non-researchers, the PWDRs, people who do research, needed to also go up. And that meant relooking at the leveling framework, changing some job descriptions, and actually kind of requiring higher skills of people in positions where the skill just didn't match what the needs were anymore. And so we wanted to give them time to upskill, but also clarify clearly what we expected of them. We needed to scale down a couple of things too. Like we had silos, and the silos were getting worse because we had less people and less areas. And so the gaps, the islands were forming further and further apart. We had lots of people doing the same work because we had less people. They weren't talking to each other. A lot of redundant tasks, requests were coming up, and no one was there to catch the redundancy. So yeah, this is fine, right? I guess if you remember the meme about the guy drinking coffee in the room full of fire, this is what it felt like. I was like, this is fine. All right, so now I have to figure out how to solve this. So what? And this reminded me very much of the evolution product and design went through when UX UI or UX or HCI, all of it used to be seen as kind of like an afterthought, as the skin, the pretty lipstick on the pig of the actual work. And really the whole thing is actual work, right? So we pivoted away from just doing reliable functional MVPs to doing MVPs that show the brand, that are aesthetically pleasing, that are beautiful, that are functional, that are reliable, that are all, right? All 5 things. And same thing needed to happen for research. We couldn't just do usability tests. We couldn't just do the basic research and be done with it. There was too much risk. We needed to really increase the quality of research and the depth of research. So we actually started to work on new tooling first. It was the first thing we needed to do. We didn't have tooling for self-service research, and we didn't have enough people to scale research operations. So we actually brought in Reops tooling. It helped with automatically emailing customers who would be perfect for research, who had complaints, who had negative app store reviews, who were kind of trying to leave the platforms or churn. We could also screen candidates and properly sort them into the right research projects. We could get consent forms done. We could schedule them into the calendar for Zoom calls, on-site visits, things like this, and then actually storing the notes from the interviews and then paying customers and partners after they finished doing the research. We went to User Zoom, which had been bought by user testing quite recently. User testing is on a storm of buying everything. And we use this tool mostly for democratizing basic research. So tree tests, one-click tests, 5-second tests, some surveys and questionnaires, plus card sorting. So that the PMs could do this, so that designers could do it more, so that researchers could kind of observe or have everything in one place in a very consistent way, but not be responsible for conducting the research. And then some of the best part, the most fun part, was how we would actually be able to like scale this globally with a much smaller team. This is the hardest part, I think. I think we went from being very luxurious with our budgets for research trips and traveling to Morocco and to Kyrgyzstan and to Paris and to the north of Europe and to Asia and talking to partners and visiting customers. And we essentially needed to look at the budget and see where we were already spending money on travel, where we were already spending money on ad spend, on campaigns, on marketing, anything that got us close to a segment, whether it was brand partners, whether it was grocery stores and restaurant partners, whether it was end consumers like you and me, and really piggyback on those projects. So the most favorite thing that I had to work on was getting the events team, the marketing team, and the brand and partner teams to open up all their plans and say, can we do research at these events? So one of my favorite things is in Warsaw, we actually set up during a festival, like a global pickup point. So you could order global food to the festival, and we called them global pickup points. But we also had user research teams there witnessing what it was like to use the experience of the pickup point, but also conducting research on what it was like using the app that day to order, to find and do product discovery, to pay, and to contact the courier, and then the entire process. So actually catching people at a really good moment when they have a successful order placed and they're a happy customer and being physically there to conduct research. We also went to partner events with the marketing department, and we'd have Glovo sponsor a DJ, or we'd have Glovo sponsor a party at the office during a local holiday, and we'd invite partners and have catering by one of our preferred partners, groceries, food, music, whatever we could from the platform, using our ecosystem and our influence to kind of bring the community together and enable and empower small businesses. Then we have a big thing called brand days. Brands can be like Coca-Cola or any kind of brand that has a kind of vested interest in the platform. Partners like grocery stores and restaurants sell products that brands make for them, like sodas, like ice cream, like things that are add-ons to the core service. Or possibly, if you're at a grocery store, everything is a brand. And so we were very known for doing these kind of summits or seminars where we had brand days and we'd invite all the brands together and we talk about ad spend and strategic things like advertising people stuff. But no one was really doing research. It was very one way. And then maybe you talked to a regional brand sales manager for a couple minutes during coffee or during one of the breakout rooms. But this wasn't really the same level of research. And this was an event where we had 30, 40, 50 brands in every single country come together. And it wasn't a great source of input for the product team. So we actually used it and actually started to go to these events and piggyback with the SDRs and the account managers and do research live with these teams. We also were able to do this thing called Brand Day, which is also Brand Day is an extension of the brand summits where we take an entire 8 to 9 hour day and then we include breakfast, lunch, and dinner. And because we started to send the researchers, we started to send the GMs. So let's say you have a brand day for Kazakhstan, then the general manager for Kazakhstan would go, and then we'd actually turn the event from a seminar where they just listened to us to a presentation of our strategy. We were conducting research, and then it just became this entire kind of different experience. You can see like a very bright, colorful, branded experience, a lot more investment from the leadership at the company. In addition to that, to really do international research well and lean, we needed to make sure that we could do localization testing much better as well, and also with, again, less people. So individually, there are things that we all know. Localization in our mind can be copywriting, so translation. But it can also be the way things are done in a certain culture. So left to right to left for like reading order is one thing that comes to mind. The language you use, like a steak can be well done, or in Spanish it would be al punto, but there's not a direct translation. You don't translate al punto at the point to English. You look for the phrase people say in that language. Same for cheers, like prost. So it's not just the language, it's also all the context it comes with. Sometimes this meant changing the entire workflow of the UI. Sometimes it meant just changing copies. Sometimes it meant changing the images. And to be able to scale internationally, we picked like a market leader per region. So we did testing in Italy, Spain, Portugal, Poland, and Romania. And then we eventually started to do individual testing in like Kyrgyzstan and Nigeria to represent their individual markets. All of these changes and all of this, the kind of like process improvements that we were making as we downsized the team and upscaled, hopefully, the output value, we had to actually make sure that we had quality standards documented in guidelines. So we made this thing called the user research playbook, and we did like 4 or 5 versions of it. And so to do a roadshow around the company and do trainings, and it was a requirement from the VP or the director of a team that they had 80% of their team attend one of the trainings by the end of the quarter. And this was the real way to kind of push for that quality change at a fast timeline. But it was a huge, huge investment. The end goal and the highest quality research, I said at the beginning, is direct user interaction. So that meant kind of recruiting customers to be our focus group or our early adopters or our beta groups. This also meant inviting focus groups physically to the office, visiting on site the headquarters of like Staples or Nike or Adidas or Nestle, and kind of talking to them about their challenges working with vendors and getting their products distributed and how they want to be known in the market so that people hopefully order more of their food, more of their products. And then we also did something called courier days, where we did the same thing we did for the customers and the partners with our couriers, who are the workforce of the product, actually getting the products and food delivery into your home or your office or wherever you are. And we increased the number of hours we required for our own employees to actually mimic and dog food, which meant it's called global cares, and you actually had to go deliver food or work at a restaurant for a little bit to actually experience what it's like to help you empathize better with the customer. Internally, we did shadowing. So imagine the designers and the researchers and the product managers spending an hour as a customer service agent or shadowing an account manager during an on-site visit or signing a new client, or sitting in on a phone call when a customer calls to complain or a courier gets lost in a snowstorm, things like this. At the end of the day, this allowed us to have a lot more quantitative and qualitative research, which meant that we could actually generate what was, either a QX score or a customer effort score for every stage of user experience, for every stage of the journey map. And so we put a score in every 4 months, so 3 times a year, for how hard it was to find a product, for how hard it was to pay and use loyalty points and tip, how hard it was to receive the product and get updates on the status of it. And so this allowed us to really match and benchmark with our competitors at a really real-time pace. And so, anything below like 50 was unacceptable, 50 to 70 was okay to good, and then 75 plus was acceptable. What we really wanted to go for was an 85.5. And this was kind of the benchmark we gave to each department and to each of the different teams. If you're familiar with the QX score and the user testing world, the score is pretty similar to the one that we use. It's half behavioral. So you pick an area or a journey and you break it down into tasks, and you have the quantitative task success number. But anyone in analytics or data can give you, which is like a period of steps in the analytics equals task completion, and you create a trigger for task completion. And then you see how many people attempted that task and how many finished. On the attitudinal side, you'd have to do a series of different research methods to get feedback on ease of use. It could be NPS, to get feedback on the appearance of the UI, to get feedback on retention, and then to get feedback on trust. Some examples of how this is being used, in the US, Walmart is a big user of this, Asda in the UK, and it oftentimes correlates directly to really high NPS when there is good task completion, really good ratings for ease of use, and very low number of problems or frustrations reported to the business. You can say that like reporting a problem or kind of complaining to a business is not something everyone wants to do. So for every one person who complains, there's probably 5 people who had that problem. So when the number of reported complaints goes down significantly, you can expect that the problem has been resolved or is being resolved well. The next thing that we started to do was to set up these advisory boards in a way that didn't burden the research team. So these user groups and focus groups before were all manually maintained. And imagine doing community service, community building. You're constantly staying in touch, you're sending messages, you're talking to them. That became very tiring. And it also was very manual before, like WhatsApp groups or Facebook groups or email lists. So we moved them over to a more interactive product, very similar to Slack. We use Better Mode. And this was something that we had seen done by Uber Eats in Australia. We had seen Airbnb do it with their host community. And we had seen DoorDash in the US do it with the actual restaurant owner group. And so we did it for all 3 groups, for our end users, for our partners, and for the couriers. And then this is the part that I like the most, that usually I get the most questions about, which is the prioritization for research. Given all these new methods and all these new inputs, we needed to bucket research very cleanly, very simply. So 3, 2, 1, gold, silver, bronze. If it was a gold level project, imagine something that would bring in a single digit or multiple digit increase in revenue. You got researchers. You probably got 2 or 3 researchers dedicated to it. So 2 staff and a principal researcher, or 2 seniors and a lead researcher. And we would be doing financial reporting recommendations, complex research questions around business model, public perception, or anything that impacted the product, let's say globally. And the US research team then had budget to conduct physical research, online digital research, moderated everything. So this was kind of like your blank check, high priority. The VPs would be involved and they would be signing off on this. Silver is kind of like your middle of the road. It's too complicated for one researcher, and it's probably way too complicated for a non-researcher, like a PM or designer, to do it alone. So the PMs and designers would work on it together, and then the researchers would actually do reviews, and they would kind of sit in on the sessions. Maybe they don't take notes. Maybe they review the insights reports before they're finished. And bronze is your typical research, your basic research, and we just had all the PMs and designers do it alone and just document it in a consistent way. And the research operations team merge these insights into the repository. Ultimately, no other changes happened to the ceremonies. We kept our one-on-ones, made them more infrequent, so bi-weekly. We merged all of our team meetings into one because the research team was much smaller. And then we started to actually send out PM level research insights reports and then open presentations in Slack to the entire engineering department, to the entire product department, marketing, strategy, finance, account management, and sales. Actually distributing research became a bit faster because everyone had a single point of contact and go-to person. And in terms of tooling, we use Amplitude, Hotjar, and Glassbox. And then we conducted research with our little team that we made public using research.globalapp.com, which was running on Qualtrics and running on Typeform. And then I'll end with a cool little fun fact. This is still the process at Glovo. I have since left because I got let go last year, but the offices around the globe now operate as research labs. And the company actually conducts meet and greet days where they invite top customers, top partners into the office. And they can actually meet with the VP of product and get feedback and suggestions. They meet with the devs and the product managers, and they give complaints directly to the team. And they actually are seeing some really cool trends. The trends we're seeing in the market align with what you're seeing at Listena. They're now using a lot more AI in research, a lot more collaboration across departments, a lot more requests for personalization from customers and from partners. But there are some interesting things on the horizon, like a new EU accessibility laws coming out. There are changes in what customers expect, and the bar is going up. So I'm super excited to see what happens in the future of international user research, because one of the things that scares me is as we go back to the office and as budgets get smaller, The expectation to do remote user testing probably is going to keep increasing. So the number of tools we use, the number of automations we use, and AI will be tricky and it'll be fun to watch. Thank you so much. And that's it for me. All right. See if Jeff comes back. Oh no, I think Jeff's on mute.
I'm sorry about that. Can you hear me okay? Oh,
Yeah.
look at that. Thanks, Kevin. You just dropped a whole bunch of awesome stuff on us right at the end there. And so I was quickly typing up some like questions, being like, oh my gosh, I want to ask this now. And I want to ask that. And I have like a whole list of other questions. And I'll just start, at the very bottom of what I was just typing, because you just mentioned AI in UX research. And that is something that I can't even fathom what that looks like right now. But I imagine that it's on a lot of teams' minds when it comes to scaling, not just internationally, but all UX research. Like, what the heck does that even look
Yes.
like?
There's some really cool companies in the space, like Chatty Insights, where they take your legacy user research repository and then you kind of build a GPT, a chat GPT based on your own research, and you treat it as a user and you ask it questions. And then you can tell it, hey, pretend you are an end user, a consumer, pretend you are a business partner, pretend you're in this country. And it tries to go through your research, your notes, the transcripts, the recordings, and be and emulate that user group and answer questions. It's an interesting way to cut down on research costs, research time, with tons of ethical concerns, because it means the quality of your existing research has to be really good, well documented. But it's interesting.
Yeah, you don't want to feed it your own garbage back, right? You want to make
Exactly.
sure good food in to get good results out.
Yeah.
Like, how do you identify what good information is to to feed a model like that? What sort of like is it certain prompts or like a bank of questions that you would generally ask?
I think it really depends on the legacy. I think it's like you said, in good things in, good things out. So if you previously were skimping on research and you didn't have researchers reviewing notes and things were not well documented, it's going to give you the same quality answers as the inputs it's been given. But if you had a larger research team, if you have access to tons of market research that you purchased, and no one has time to go through it and kind of internalize. Giving it access to AI is actually super cool because it's going to not forget anything.
It's true.
It doesn't know the weight of things, right? That's going to be something you have to tell it. It's kind of like having a new employee. So as long as you onboard it very well, you'll be fine.
Oh, interesting. That's an interesting way of thinking about it. It's like like your low level, come in person to help with these things, and you need to make sure that they're onboarded and up to speed, just like anybody else is. I sort of wonder how much investment goes into that, to be honest.
Depends. Some research teams actually now sit and train AI. Like I know some content designers who now train AI to do content assistance for them. So I think it can be super interesting to see it as onboarding, because I mean it
Gosh.
really is.
Gosh, I've one other. It's kind of a question, but kind of just like a comment too, because at the very top of your talk, you mentioned that you like to use humor in your talks, especially when talking about hard things. And yes, economic downturns and layoffs can be very difficult. I mean, you showed that graphic of the wave of layoffs, and I was like, "Yep, I was right there." So a lot of us felt that. Now in acknowledging this and having to go through some of this downsizing, is there sort of an empathy on the other side of the business too, where it's like you might be like, oh my gosh, these evil companies are just chopping people's well-beings down, but they really do have a goal back, in the back of their minds, and they're trying to accomplish something, and they're trying to figure out good solutions for that. Have you developed empathy on the other side of that pendulum?
Like for the companies, you mean?
Hmm. And the hippos,
Um,
for that matter.
yeah. I mean, I'm very similar to Simon Sinek when it comes to this. Like, there is a very inescapable truth that the layoffs have changed. Like, I think it was 1981 where the first time a company decided to do layoffs to save money to reach a financial target publicly,
Yeah.
for like a publicly traded company, and they admit it. And now it's become the norm because I think companies who operate in the same industry are being held to the standard of your competitors are doing it, you're behind on revenue, why aren't you doing it? So I don't think it's the same. So my empathy is a bit different. Like during COVID
Yeah.
when Booking did it, I felt empathy because they're a travel company that only gets paid when people check in. No one
Oh,
was checking in. No one's traveling. We saw check-ins go to zero for months. And so I knew that was our key metric for revenue. And that being zero every single day, just I knew it was gonna
oh.
come. It's different now. Like companies are seeing record profits, like airlines,
Yeah.
and then they're doing layoffs. And so my empathy is less so with them and more so with the people like managers like myself who have to do the layoffs.
Exactly, because you don't want to have to be put in a position just for the sake of like a bottom line necessarily. You want to make sure that you're doing it for if you're making the investment to accomplish a thing, on top of that. So I can see where like you would be at odds of like, we'll have to carry out a certain thing, to justify a business. But I see where the dollars should be invested over here.
Exactly.
That seems very, very like difficult to try to sit in, in the middle of that tension. So so I would imagine that's something you really had to struggle with during 2020 to 2023 or so. That's probably where you were doing that
3 hard
mostly.
years.
Yeah, and then lastly, you were mentioning that these downturns oftentimes led to like a silo mentality on teams as well, and so we started to or you started to see different behaviors in the research and needed to restructure teams accordingly. Like, what does silo mentality look like, and how do you identify it?
So I think both really large companies and really small companies act ironically very similar. We don't really think this normally. We usually think companies get bigger, they get bureaucratic and slow, but the same behavior appears. So you get top-down behavior, you get executives who make choices kind of sporadically, these big pivots. So this is very similar to very small companies, right? Everyone has autonomy. There's only one person owning a thing. So if they change their mind, then the strategy changes with their mind. And so what you see working well with small teams is a lot more in-person meetings, a lot more collaboration. When you're small, it's very easy to do that. When you're very big and this big shift happens and you want everyone to sit in the room and just talk it out and make a new plan, it's not possible. Because even with the downsizing we did, we're still huge.
Yeah.
But the behavior was the same. And so what I started to say
So
was,
interesting.
let's merge the teams into these teams on experiences, on domains, and less on products. So if there's a B2B team and a B2C team, and you both touch the same tools, and you both touch the same metrics, why aren't you doing PRDs together? Why aren't you doing retros together? Why aren't you doing design reviews together? And so we just merged them when we restructured the research team. So you had one researcher doing both sides of the business.
Oh my gosh. And just as you said before, it's more like a collaborative effort that needs to take place to make sure that all these, pistons are firing, on key. It's not just the UX team, but you have the DevOps team, you have the design team, you have other teams that you need. And if they're not into each other, then that's probably a good
Yep.
indication that there's a silo and maybe some larger discussions need to happen, eh?
Yeah, exactly.
Well, another thing that folks might not know about your previous talks is that you also discuss about how to get buy-in on like insights and ideas. And I hate ending the conversation right now because now you talk about these insights, the repositories, breaking down silos, changing team structures. It's like, now I want to know how to get the hippos buy-in into all this stuff, especially when you get into it. I'm hoping that we'll hit that in the Q&A panel at the end of this, because I think that would be a fascinating thing that not just you would have good insights on, but that the other speakers will have as well. So I'm looking forward to that, selfishly.
Yep. So am I. But
Well,
bye for now, and I'll see you at the panel.
thank you so much. And thank you, Kevin. Let's give him a virtual round of applause. I'm sure you can all hear that, right? Yeah. Thank you very much, Kevin. So great to have
Thank
you.
you.